Since it's the anniversary, or should I say the 33rd birthday of the Japanese launch of the Neo Geo system, one of those elusive consoles that most folks didn't see, I know I didn't see it. That, the Virtual Boy, and the Atari Jaguar, I never got a chance to pick one up, but I did at least see a Jaguar and a Virtual Boy in the wild at KB Toys that's extinct too. But before we dig into any of the software, them RPGs on the Neo Geo, I thought that I should probably go over what the hell a Neo Geo is in the first place, because if it was foreign to me back in the 90s, most people probably don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. The Neo Geo is a family of video game hardware that was developed by SNK. Yep, the same folks that did that King of Fighters. Neo Geo has been on the market for a minute. It competed with Super Nintendo, Genesis, and TurboGrafx-16 back during the original console wars. I have to go into another video for that TurboGrafx-16. But sadly, like the Turbo, Neo Geo couldn't find its way to many consumers, i.e. the hands and the homes of gamers in the early 1990s. I also remember hearing and reading about the system being a powerhouse and being damn near the price of, it was $649 back in the 90s. Not to mention that since it had an arcade background, there not as many variety of games as Nintendo and Sega. The system looked real sleek, like a smooth Genesis, and the controller had some multi-colors, you know, for the kiddies. That's what consoles was marketed to back in the day. And even had a joystick, which, since its roots were based in fighting, you know, it had to have a stick. Speaking of fighting games though, as a matter of fact, arcade fighter type games is kind of like all the Neo Geo really had, but for the purpose of the video, I was able to dig up one RPG that the Neo Geo had, and that game was called Cross Swords, which also could explain the reason why the system didn't have that much success. It didn't have a huge variety of games, let alone the lifeblood of a system, which is an RPG. Cross Swords was not like the other RPGs at the time, which was Squaresoft's Final Fantasy, Enix Dragon Warriors, and Sega's Phantasy Star, or even like Nintendo's Zelda. Yes, I consider Zelda an RPG.
Hey, listen!
Cross Swords was one of the first hack and slash games at its time and was released in July of 1991 for the Neo Geo arcade system, and then later on that year for the Neo Geo home system. The gameplay was similar to that of a first-person shooter, but instead of a shooter or you choosing guns or punches, you actually using shields and swords and medieval weapons. The game was also co-op, which, you know, I don't want to hear why we can't have more co-op RPGs modern day when we had them on the Neo Geo in 1990. You do have other party members, but sadly, like Mac from Punch-Out, they were like silhouettes or skeleton type framework Final Destination creatures. The game initially got some pretty high reviews and praise for its out-of-the-box style for the time, but again, the game really didn't see that much light of day, mainly because the Neo Geo didn't have a huge home base, but also, most importantly, because the console was $649. Now y'all see why I never seen one in a while. The Super Nintendo and the Genesis were both like under $300. The plot was solid for its time. You know, there was the classic, there was an enchanted land, a plague comes and hits it, a demon lord appears, then the brave hero, the knight of the journey, steps in to save the world. The game, as you expect now, is well over $100, and if you want to snag it, I even see one in the box for like 3G. I don't know about y'all, but I ain't got that kind of deal, especially if I still gotta go find a working Neo Geo. Like, who gonna fix a Neo Geo nowadays? I still want one though, but although the Neo Geo wasn't as successful as the Genesis or the Super Nintendo respectively, it did last from 1990 to 2004. And it did seem to learn that RPGs, again, are the lifeblood of a console. It eventually made more RPGs when it came to the Neo Geo Pocket. Many games have gotten reports or re-releases in modern day games. Biomotor, Ultron, Evolution, Dark Arms, Ogre Battle Gaiden, Neo Geo Pocket Color Selection 1 and 2, and Newz Ron Pod, just to name a few. But interweb, that's all I got for you today. Again, happy birthday, Neo Geo. You are a system that eluded me. Let me know in the comment sections below if any of y'all ever heard what a Neo Geo is, or better yet, have you ever played one or even seen one in the wild? And if you want to stay up to date with all things RPGs, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I make geekly content like this on the channel all the time. For the longest time, I wasn't being legit or for real with myself either, because that was a part of me. And even though I was doing it in secret. And then it just hit me. And that's when it hit me. And that's when I became a geek. Finally, the sleeper has awakened. I am the prince of all geeks once again.